How do you do that? How do you help your product teams as they move through that maturity matrix to make sure that what they are measuring aligns to sort of the bigger OKR business outcomes of the company?
Yeah, this is such a tough one because at the end of the day, it's top line and margin and EPS growth that matter. So I would say that our headline metrics approach has been our best stab at that, which is providing this portfolio of metrics that you could view for any product to see how it's impacting on the user side. So it doesn't really directly impact, but it helps you to gauge the quality of your revenue. And I think that's a big piece.
If you build software or lead people who do, then you're in the right place. This is Hard Calls. Real decisions, real leaders, real outcomes.
Hi, everyone. I am Trisha Price, and welcome back to Hard Calls, the podcast where we bring on the best product leaders from across the globe to talk about those moments, the decisions that matter, the hard calls. On today's show, we have Noa Ginsberg, who leads the Product Management Center of Excellence at FactSet. Noa and I have known each other for about 4 years now since I joined Pendo. When I met Noa, she was starting up a product analytics and product center of excellence function for FactSet. I really, right from the start, admired Noa's approach to the role, her commitment to excellence, and her ability to build strong teams and relationships. In addition to Noa sharing a hard call that's made a big impact on her career, we're also going to dive into what does it take to create a product center of excellence and the benefits that the team has on being a product-led company. Noa's going to share her insights on why product operations is the glue that binds all of the pieces of the org together, her learnings on how to keep product teams close to the customer, and how AI is changing the product landscape. This is a truly knowledge-rich conversation, and I can't wait for you to hear it and to jump into it. Welcome to the show, Noa.
Thank you so much, Trisha. It's great to be here.
So, Noa, you know that the show is called Hard Calls. So, looking back over your career, or even just in the past year, can you share a hard call that you've had to make? What made it so challenging? What considerations or process did you follow to make the decision? And what'd you learn from it?
Yeah, well, I'll start off by saying, first of all, I'm thrilled to be here. I saw the list of other guests and I was super flattered. So, really appreciate the opportunity. And I love chatting with you and talking shop, and the opportunity to do that's awesome. So thanks for having me. Hard calls are pretty much what we do in product. I think there are very few easy calls, especially as you mature in your career, you start seeing only hard calls. And I've noticed that for me, the hardest calls tend to be at the intersection of people and priorities. And each of those are hard, and those are kind of what we do in product. Again, the people on our team, the people we hire, the people we work with as our stakeholders, our clients, importantly. And then the priorities we set as a product team are pretty much our bread and butter. And that's how we master all our resources together and deliver value for our clients to be successful. And the intersection of those are when I think it's the hardest call. So I can think back to a time about 4 years ago when we really wanted to double down on our ability to run a real true product organization, as you might see at any tech company. And we've been around a long time. So we've been around since, the late 70s, before the internet, before AI. So we've had a lot of different ways of doing things, but we had the opportunity to really double down on product thinking, a product mindset, the product toolkit that you need, the skill set that you need. But that was a major transformation and a huge undertaking. And we did it so that we could deliver on our strategy, and we did it so that we could deliver for our customers and make them more successful, which is what we're here to do. But that was a tough thing to go through because it was a real shift for a lot of people in their daily roles, mostly very positively received. And we've come a long way, but we had, Pendo was a part of that as we stood up product analytics. To give a single platform for people to be able to monitor things rather than having to stand up their own. But it was a hard call to move forward with that versus being successful as we are for so long, making that shift, getting everyone on board, getting the tools and processes in place to support that from a product excellence perspective is definitely a very hard call. One that I think we are now seeing the fruit of, because we have positioned ourselves so well to take advantage of this new wave of technology with AI in the last few years. If we hadn't had the foresight to really position ourselves for that, I think we wouldn't be where we are. And we are pretty far along and ahead of the curve, especially in a space that can tend to lag that adoption of these types of things. So it was a risk, but it's always good to have a balanced risk. So I think that's a key part of a hard call. And we use Pendo, we use a lot of other tools to help us make like de-risked decisions, but there's always some element of risk in any call, or we wouldn't be making it. It wouldn't be a hard call. So
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because hard calls are a little bit of, our experience and our gut feel combined with data and tools and bringing our stakeholders together. All of those have to come together to make those hard calls. But I always like to tell my team too, no decision is also a decision. And so, like, while a hard call might be difficult, not making a decision is just as impactful and a lot of times worse.
yes, absolutely. We try to bring more speed to decision making here. But yeah, you have to pull it forward. You have to make the hard call. You have to make it clear to people too what the call is. And I think recognizing where you are, whether it's a people call or if it's a priorities call, I think knowing where you are is always important in order to get where you want to go. You have to know where you're starting. And that's something that we think about a lot. We have a lot of good tooling in place. And you mentioned, instinct versus data. I really think our gut feel as you gain experience is a bunch of data that's just sort of in your own LLM in your mind of what you should do, what you've seen this before. You start to have some pattern recognition. But always relying and gut checking that not only with the data, but with other experts, other stakeholders, with our customers, within our own teams, always validating that. So like trust your gut, but verify, I think is very important, and using all those tools at your disposal so you do make the best decision.
That is great advice. I want to dive into some of the things you mentioned in your hard call a bit in the Product Center of Excellence. But before we do, Noah, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about FactSet and what you do, and particularly your role and your team before we jump in.
Yeah, definitely. So FactSet is a financial data and analytics provider. So we have workstation tools that you might use to monitor the markets, to make trades, to research companies, to catch up on earnings. And it's used by over 8,000 of the largest financial institutions, over 200,000 users, and with 95% retention. So we've been around for 46 years, been public for 30. I actually used FactSet in my first job out of school. I was a user of FactSet for a couple of years when I started out in investment banking. And I'd always been interested in finance and technology. So I went to a bank and worked in the technology group at the bank, used FactSet, loved the tool, loved the people, loved the client focus that they had. The real obsession with the user was clear to me as a client. So I came to work for FactSet, and I've been here for 23 years now in a bunch of different roles. But I started out supporting our clients as a consultant on the help desk. So we would answer the phones here in New York from the bankers calling at 2 a.m. who needed help. So we gain a lot of empathy for the role of our clients, and that's inherent in everyone who works here. A lot of people come up through right out of college answering phones and things like that. So FactSet's a pretty indispensable tool to the investing community. So anyone who works at a wealth advisor or a hedge fund or an asset manager or an investment bank definitely uses FactSet or has in the past. So it's really part of the fabric of how the investment community operates. And we are known for our service and our client obsession. Really, that's a big differentiator for us, and something that I think is only continuing as we're seeing the pace of change increase so much. So it wasn't surprising to me when we made this shift to have a product management excellence group, because it really does help enable the whole company to have that client obsession, which we already inherently have as FactSetters. But it really helps to bring scale and consistency to that so that everybody can do things. And maybe there are even fewer hard calls for others to make if we in the Center of Excellence are kind of providing, what tooling should we use? How do I do user research? What design system should I use? trying to solve a lot of those issues at scale for people so they don't have to make those hard calls. We've already made them. That's, I think, a huge benefit to the team as well.
Wow. First of all, incredible, long-standing, successful company with an incredible reputation, and what an interesting career for you to come have joined them so long ago and done so many different roles there, and now to be leading this product center of excellence, which I know the entire product team at FactSet really leans on you for best practices, for insights, to really make sure that you can execute on that client obsession, or as we call it at Pendo, our core values, maniacal focus on the customer. So we have that in common. And I think that, that's, I think, a big part of not just our love of product, which I know we'll talk about today, but our obsession with customers has definitely brought you and I together over the 4 years as we've talked. So really excited to dive in. I get the question a lot, Noah, when I'm out talking to customers or just product managers and product teams and product leaders, is, product operations, center of excellence for, product overall. How do I do it? What does it look like? So I'm really excited to spend this time today with you, who is truly a leader in setting up a center of excellence and has done just an incredible job with it for people to learn from you. So maybe tell me, do you think, because I get asked this a lot, do you think every company should have a product management center of excellence? Or if not, is there a time or a level of maturity when you think, it's time to establish one?
Yeah, great question. I wish I had a book, to read to tell me about every specific situation. There are a few out there on this topic, but I've found that nothing really, it's great to take those as inputs, but you kind of have to do your own, again, instinct combination with data to decide what works for you. So I think certainly a large company, FactSet has 13,000 employees globally. It's a big company, hard to keep everything coordinated. So sometimes that can be sort of a warning, or maybe a light going off on the dashboard to say, hey, maybe you should think about this. So there are a few things that I think you could think about. One is probably coordination. So if you're starting to feel like things might not be as smooth as they could be, or you're seeing a lot of Conway's law, maybe if you're big enough where you're seeing multiple kind of conveyor belts coming out of the company, and to the consumer or the end user, it's looks like a bunch of different companies. That's obviously a red flag that would say hey, maybe we should benefit from some less duplication of effort, from more coordination. That's one thing that I think any kind of centralized team can help with. And another one is related to that, probably stakeholder confusion. So does product marketing know how to work with each team in the same way? Is the process in one team totally different? And then when another central team tries to work with that product team, it takes too long because it's learning a new way of doing things. Same thing with support or sales. Do we have a well-oiled machine? Does everybody know what to do? You don't always need people to set that up. You can just be clear of how things should go with existing personnel and staff. But beyond a certain scale, I think it's very helpful to have a central team like this that operates almost like a platform team would, like a platform product team, but for the product of building products, which is a little bit meta, but we do think about it as a product. What we do, what we put out from our team is a product, and what, the people using it internally at the company are our users. And we are very careful to always stay connected to our users. It's very important for what we're doing. And then I think the last thing I would say is if you find that the language you're speaking is not the same as another product team, there might be some differences that are necessary depending on the kind of product you have. But if you're all talking about adoption and you have a different denominator for adoption, it's very hard to compare the success of one product versus another. And when you have a large product portfolio, it's very important to be able to have an apples to apples comparison on the success of that product. So those are kind of three areas, I guess I would say, where you might want to think about it if you don't already. And I would say even if you can see a little bit ahead and anticipate those things, you'd be even better off, because once you have a certain scale, I think it really helps to have some central coordination.
I'm so glad you brought up the stakeholders piece. I'm such a firm believer, and I know you are too, that the only reason we do product investments or technology investments, depending on the kind of company you are, is to drive business outcomes, right? It's either to drive revenue, to cut costs, to reduce risk. And the leaders of our companies, teams, investors, they expect a return for this investment that we're making. And, I think it's easy in product to get too focused on the feature you're building or the product you're shipping and not the outcome you're driving. And without that really strong stakeholder communication and coordination, you won't get those business outcomes that you need from your product. So it's great that you talked about how you operate and the processes with your stakeholders being such an important part of a COE. And when you need a COE is to standardize that, because without those relationships and without the processes to partner, if sales isn't selling it and support doesn't know how to support the new features and products that you're putting out, and you don't have a convenient way to work with those people because they have day jobs too, it's kind of like, why are you building what you're building?
Totally. We've tried to really provide data around that too. So on our agile teams, we have stakeholder assessments that some of the teams can do to see, assess how well the team is meeting the stakeholders' expectations on things like communications or value delivery or timing. So those things are all really important to monitor. And then we also have a portfolio of headline metrics that is visible to everyone at the company across the product portfolio. And those are the headlines that we want people to be talking about and that can be used to compare across products. So a key one for support would be supportability. Some of these sort of hidden costs, trying to bring them to light so people really understand the full implication of a product. It's not just who paid for it and how much they paid, but how much it costs to support the product. And that's something we've tried to bring forward so stakeholders have more realization of that too. Yeah. And even within the product teams to be able to have that visibility.
Yeah. It's good that you brought up supportability, because, we often as product managers, get pretty good at voice of customer. And whether that comes through our sales teams or through customers directly, or customer success teams, really understanding what it is that our customers are looking for. But indirectly, it does impact our customers. And if we're going to be customer obsessed, if a product's difficult to support and support's not educated on it, not only does that drive costs up of your overall product, but it does impact customer happiness. And it may be okay for a period of time where your support team can cover up for you. But in the end, if your product's not easy to support, or there's a lot of support tickets coming out of a particular part of your product, that's equally important to fix than like direct voice of customer.
Yeah, we try to monitor some buddy metrics along with supportability. So we're not just looking at does support go down and then because people don't like it and stopped using it. That's one reason it could go down. So we always pair it up with NPS, which we do get from Pendo, and we track NPS versus year-over-year change in supportability for cases per active user. And we have tracked that for years now since we've had Pendo and NPS in place. And it's been really helpful to see that validation that we are improving and we're not, not at the expense of our customer satisfaction. So that's something that's really important to us in terms of supportability and voice of the customer. And we've also gotten so much more data in the last 4 years since standing up this team. We really didn't have a centralized place. We have a lot of connectivity with our customers, super focused on them and really at the core of everything we do. But a systematic way of sharing that, making sure it's available to everyone, didn't exist. You had to know someone or know who had it or find it somewhere. But we've kind of brought that together into an inventory so we know what we're getting, what streams of VOC data we have, who owns it, what the follow-up is that's expected. And that's a work in progress. Like we still want to expand that. We want to do more there, but we've come a really long way. And I think it shows in how we develop our products and ultimately what we deliver.
So, we kind of dove in a little bit into some of the things your team does and focuses on around analytics and voice of customer and stakeholder management. But for those just getting started with a product center of excellence and maybe just establishing them, like how do you get started? What are the things to consider? Like, do you jump right to some of the mature processes you're talking about with NPS and data collection and standard analytics and adoption? Or, are there more simple places for people to start? What are the considerations for folks to think about?
Yeah, I think it's important to know what good looks like. As I said, sort of where you want to go and where you are, and try to chart a path to get there. But obviously, you can't start with everything. And like good product people, we know we have to prioritize. So I would look at what is the biggest pain point for your product managers or for the business. Like, what visibility is missing in the KPIs we're using to track our investments or to track, how the company is doing as a whole? What are the blind spots? Maybe you don't have them. Maybe that's really well-oiled machine and you don't need to focus on the metrics piece. I think there are some companies that probably are there just starting off. But if you have that, great, you can move on to something else. But I think having a centralized qualitative and quantitative view is very helpful. And those things inform each other. So that's another one. So if you don't have a user research function that is central, I think that's another place that could be a kind of high leverage place to start. As well as a system to store the user research you're doing so you can share that knowledge broadly. That's really important because product people can conduct user research and do it very well, but they're not, laser focused on that. They don't know all of the methodologies that are available necessarily, right? So having a centralized, really skilled user research team can be very helpful. And again, bring leverage to the product teams. I think there's also some goodness in centralizing how we communicate with clients. So in-app, whether it's a homegrown thing or Pendo, we use a combination. How are we communicating to clients with our voice? And then how do we get information from customers in the app or in email or in other channels? So those are some sort of good ideas to start. I think even when you have started, we work on this maturity assessment for ourselves. And we made an acronym out of it so that we could remember it because we like acronyms in finance and at FactSet. So it's FACT is our own internal maturity model specifically for product analytics, but it's foundational, aspirational, competitive, and then transformative. And we use that to assess ourselves, but also how well our product teams are using and leveraging the data that we are providing. And that helps us see, okay, let's think about where we are. We come back to it when we're setting goals for the year. What do we want to do to level up the whole function? And look, if we're in column A, we want to move to column C, what do we need to do? Or what are the things we could try or consider doing next year to just move us forward? So I think that's, whether you're at a 0 or you're on your way, I think that's just a good outlook and way to frame it.
Yeah, it forces us all to constantly get better and mature, and see a path to that no matter where we are. Noah, when you're moving through your maturity matrix or aligning on which metrics matter for a particular product group, how do you align what your product teams are measuring to what your leadership is accountable to, right? Because I see this is really hard, I think, in product. I think this is one of the hardest things. It's hard for me. And I mean, we at Pendo are an analytics company, and it's still really hard to go from, hey, we're trying to drive revenue. Hey, we're trying to improve cross-sell. Hey, we're trying to reduce support cost, to this is the particular part of the product I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to measure, time to value or retention. Like, how do you do that? How do you help your product teams as they move through that maturity matrix to make sure that what they are measuring aligns to sort of the bigger OKR business outcomes of the company?
Yeah, this is such a tough one because at the end of the day, it's top line and margin and EPS growth that matter. So I would say that our headline metrics approach has been our best stab at that, which is providing this portfolio of metrics that you could view for any product to see how it's impacting on the user side. So it doesn't really directly impact, but it helps you to gauge the quality of your revenue. And I think that's a big piece. So whereas ASV, what we call annual subscription value, because we're a subscription business, is a lagging indicator. We want more leading indicators. We want to be able to assess the health of our customers better. So the more data we have on how the system is being used, what tools they're using, what data they're using, the better we can understand the quality, maybe better address at risk, and build that success profile based on the data we have. So I think without a basic set of metrics, and we only have a handful, right? It's 5 metrics, working on 6, but adoption, sentiment, which is from Pendo, NPS, engagement, supportability. Those are the main areas that we are providing for everyone else to monitor that. So I think then beyond that, beyond sort of equipping people with the basics, it's also fostering some experimentation and being okay to experiment, because we might say that we think this is a leading indicator, but it may not turn out to be. But you can't argue that adoption is a good thing. So you want higher adoption. Yes. You don't want to build something. It's like everyone's worst nightmare. Every engineer's worst nightmare. Every product person, you build something and no one uses it. And it could be a marketing problem. It could be a go-to-market problem or a sales problem. Like it doesn't, it radiates out from the product though. If it's not a good product, doesn't matter if you have a world-class.
I always say that, if you have an adoption problem, it's the product. Now, those other groups could be making it better or can cover up really well to make it less bad. But at the end of the day, if we have an adoption problem, we have to look ourselves in the eye as product team and ask ourselves what's going wrong.
Yes, 100%. And so we want to always increase adoption. And we work very closely with go-to-market. Like we as the Center for Product Excellence, we redefined our product life cycle. So that, again, everyone's speaking the same language. Everyone knows what we mean when we say the ideate or validate or build phases. And we worked with product marketing to be very close throughout the life cycle, especially at the earliest stages, so that they're involved and it isn't a handoff where it's like finger pointing happening. But we've gotten a lot of runway out of that. And it's really improved, especially over the last few years.
Well, Noa, your team is so important at setting these standards of facts, your maturity matrix, and how to work with stakeholders, and really ensuring you get business outcomes from your investment. But they're not the ones accountable or owning the actual individual products, right? They're that messy middle supporting all of the other teams around them. With that, I know you've talked about being customer obsessed is so important at FactSet. How do you motivate your team, make them feel connected to the customer and accountable to outcomes when you are sort of the messy middle and one step removed from the end product?
Yeah. I mean, we do work really directly and as one with these teams, especially the pillars in my team are, UX, client help and communication, enterprise business agility, and product analytics. So those teams are working closely with the product teams. So they're part of the team and they're invested and they understand as well as the others on the team what we're trying to drive, and understanding the user is always something we are seeking to do. But we also have another set of users, which is our internal users. Mm-hmm. So I've tried, and I think most of the team has always seen it as what we do is a product for internal consumers. And we are very closely connected to them. We run cabs, we do annual surveys, we check engagement with the tools that we build and the products, quote unquote, that we release. And some of those products are events, things like we run this annual Ideathon, which is a pretty unique innovation tournament that precedes our hackathon. And it seeds the hackathon with business validated ideas coming from it can come from engineering, but it often comes from outside of product engineering design. It comes from sales, it comes from finance, it comes from HR. So it's really the whole company putting forth innovation ideas, and then people can take those forward to the hackathon. And so we try to foster that innovation and that feeling of a product mindset, even within our internal clients and our internal teams. And I think that's really important. But when you're setting goals, it is hard to, especially OKRs, right? They're supposed to be within your line of influence, and something too far beyond, it can be difficult. So that, we are challenged by that. But I think we try to focus more on the direct impact we're having, and then sort of the second order things we do follow also.
Yeah, that's great. It is such a critical role, and it is critical to keep people feeling connected and tied to the business outcomes. And I know you do a great job of that. A few minutes ago, you mentioned your product development life cycle and even changing it up and standardizing it to make sure that everyone, even your stakeholders, knew it. You also just mentioned your ideathon and your hackathon. Right now, all of us, our product development life cycle is in flux, and the tools that we're using and the pace at which we're ideating and validating is changing. And even things like ideathons to hackathon, it used to be probably 2 years ago or a year ago, if you did an ideathon, they probably ended up in some sort of slides, or maybe, a document outlining the idea. And now I'm guessing you have a full blown prototype, even without engineering involved. So tell me about how you think about that, and how the roles are blurring, and just how are you responding and changing in this sort of new era of product development?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's head is spinning, but in a really exciting way. I mean, I first entered the workforce around the .com time, and that was also super exciting. That feels the same to me. We are really forward thinking on this, and from the very early stages, we had our own internal AI tooling. So everyone at FactSet has been able to play around and get good at these technologies for years now. Of course, that has different implications, but we are a pretty creative group of people. We're like high agency. It's a very entrepreneurial kind of environment for a large company. And so we've seen a lot of that happening already. We've got the builders coming in, no matter what their role is, everyone's now a builder, it sounds like. So whether you're a product person or a designer or an engineer who didn't know front-end development, like now everyone can do that. Of course, not in production, but it really has facilitated the speed, because instead of talking about doing something, we're just doing it. So the early stages of the life cycle, I think, are the most exciting and ripe for disruption and acceleration by these tools, even though it sort of started off in the development side with the code completion or code automation. And we're seeing great results there, but it's more incremental, I would say, when you think about the build phase. Like, obviously execution is very important, but we're really good at it already. And so it's hard to sort of 10x that. But I think when you think about all the communication that happens, the long documents that we would write, like, I just don't think that's the future. And that cuts not hours off of developing something, but months off of deciding whether something's a good idea or not.
Yeah.
And that's super high leverage.
I totally agree with you. It's the confidence factor when we actually put engineering effort at something is wildly different now than it was a year ago. It used to be, hey, we've got this idea. We've talked to a few customers. We've done some discovery. Let's get V0 into some sort of design partner's hands, and then iterate, and kind of constantly examine whether we're going to kill something. But now what our builders, as you said, can build, even without engineering support, can get us to a point where we can iterate so much faster that by the time we're building for real, the confidence level, we've gone through so much iteration and levels of discovery, and it's so fast. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. We're hearing teams canceling meetings because they don't need to sync up on something. Like, the prototype kind of helps them do that. we're seeing people show a prototype to a client in the morning and then 15 minutes later show it again. And so the number of iterations is just skyrocketing because anyone can iterate. You don't need to go have a meeting. You don't need to ask the designer to redo the Figma prototype. There's some downside to that, and we're going to work through a lot of the issues it raises of like whose job is whose. But I think, we're an open-minded place. And so I think we'll work through those things, but there are real things to consider, like how do our processes get impacted by these changes? But overall, it's super exciting. And most people are really excited about it because, again, we're a place where people just want to get stuff done and want the best outcome. So I think that's going to have a huge impact. We're piloting a few different tools here for product and design. For the AI prototyping piece, we're working on an agent backlog for accelerating the product lifecycle. And obviously our developers have been at this for a while when tools like GitHub Copilot and others, came out, and Cursor. So there's a lot of exploration happening, and we don't want people to have to go do it on the side of the desk or, in their spare time. Like, we want to provide these tools. We want to change the way we're working and be at the cutting edge here because it's a huge opportunity.
So you talked about utilizing all kinds of different tools that give you productivity, AI really supercharging and giving you productivity. You just mentioned an agent. Is that an agent you guys are actually thinking about building that's particular and has context about your processes and your products that helps your product managers be more efficient?
Yeah, we're not sure yet what it looks like, but we've put the call out to build up our backlog by the end of the year. And then on our internal agent platform, which we're developing, we will be building out those tools that are going to help us to get that productivity. So it could be something more rules-based. Maybe it's not an agent. There's a lot of opportunity to improve and get speed out of a process that isn't AI. So we're open to that too. But the agentic piece is, I think, going to be very important. Imagine you have an agent that updates your documentation for you automatically based on the release notes, or just constantly trolls your documentation to say, hey, like, these pages, and then our writers can then document so much more, or they can work on other things. It's a really exciting area. Our quality would be better because it's just hard for us to manage everything, even though, we have great people. It's just a lot to cover.
And no, I know we haven't talked about this before, but imagine it'll be really cool. And this is what we're planning for at Pendo too. If when you're building that agent would have access to your Pendo data, and you could ask it, even this is your agent, not the one we're building, but one you have configured and built on your own, but through our MCP server, you'd be able to ask adoption numbers, et cetera, through your own agent. And that's, I think, an exciting thing, because I do think everyone, yeah, of course, all software companies, you're doing it, we're doing it, are building these agentic interfaces and agentic automation. But we also know you're going to have your own, and your own's going to have special context about things that is only relevant to FactSet and FactSet's group of product managers. And we want to make sure that that kind of data is available to those agents as well.
It's totally exactly the same for us with our clients. So we definitely would want to be involved in that design partner program for MCP. And it's the same way we're thinking about both internally for ourselves, enabling that with the protocol and the agent platform, and agentic registry, so that we know what's out there and can permission appropriately. There's so much to consider, but we are doing that for our clients as well. So we're totally on the same page, although that page keeps moving.
Keeps turning.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's no better time in my career of building software than now. And I think it allows us to focus on the things that are important, like business outcomes and customer happiness and customer outcomes, versus a lot of the more mundane tasks that have to get done because they're a part of the job, but allowing these tools to automate more and more of those. And I think that's just such an exciting time. And I think it'll help us get back to the part of our job that is the most rewarding, but also the most difficult, which is really the hard call. And, how we opened it and how we can finish today, which is all around what makes product hard, is that everybody thinks they know the right answer and has an opinion, right? One particular customer, one particular salesperson. But at the end of the day, we are the ones who have to make the hard calls in our jobs. And, it's this interesting sort of balance between gut instincts that we talked about earlier, which I agree with you. I love your analogy that gut instincts is really data. It's just our own LLM human processing all of that data and pattern recognition to make decisions. And you can use other people and you can use systems and other pieces of data, but your gut instincts is really data too. And I love that. And I love, learning from you today about your product center of excellence and how that enables not just you to make decisions, but all of your product managers to make more informed and faster and better decisions, and how you have been able to continue to evolve with AI and new tools that are out there, but yet still remained business outcome analytics focused, and most of all, customer success focused. So I just really appreciate you, Noah. Been a longtime partner for us at Pendo, but also for me. And I always learn something from you every time we have a conversation, and impressed with you and what FactSet has done. So truly appreciate you coming on today and sharing your knowledge and wisdom with our listeners and with me, and look forward to future conversations.
Likewise. Thank you so much. And I learned so much from you as well, and from the podcast. So it's a great thing you've started here.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Noah.
Thank you for listening to Hard Calls, the product podcast where we share best practices and all the things you need to succeed. If you enjoyed the show today, share it with your friends and come back for more.